Hey traders, welcome to today's recap. This is Christian from Hertz Tribeca Trade Group, and today is Wednesday, September 12th, and really some back and forth action today, all over the place in the market. And I said kind of at the end of the day in the trading room that almost felt like you had a whole week of trading lumped into one day today. It was just one of those days where it looked like we were going to break down, it looked like we were going to rally hard, and we finished basically flat for the day. But a lot of intraday moves. So again, if you know, just looking at the S&P itself, which I think my view is that the S&P is very boring. You can't see what's underneath the hood in terms of sectors. I'm trying to remember when I've seen such sector separation like this before. I think it's been really volatile within the S&P, right? So underneath the hood, and I'll show you what I mean. But again, back and forth. The S&P finished fine. It seemed like the S&P and the Dow were moving together. We're kind of lockstep today. And the Qs and IWM, even though there's really no overlap between the Qs and IWM, by the way, you could see before I move to those two indices, but you could see that the S&P is kind of just doing fine. Doji candle after two green candles, and above value, and now above all the short-term moving averages. So one day could change all of that. You know, we don't have these big days anymore. And again, I think the reason why the S&P hasn't had a 1% day, and I think since May, I may be wrong with that. I have to double check that, but I believe I checked yesterday and it was May. And the reason for that is not because it's not exciting. It's just we've got some sectors up every day and we've got some sectors down every day. And it is a stock pickers market. But again, I always go back to my saying for that. It doesn't mean that just because it's a stock pickers market, it's easy. It's not. You could be in some areas of the market like financials, and you just kind of are shaking your head with the financials, which just are not participating at all, and finished down pretty decently today. So let me go over to the Qs, because I was going to mention just a quick note about the Qs. Finished down 30 basis points. They look like they were at one point really going to break down. You could see a hammer bar basically coming right back to the two short-term moving averages. So no buy signal, no real sell signal. I said that backwards. No sell signal and no real buy signal either. And if we zoom out here, you could see we did break value for the day, but we came right back. And it seems like whenever we move down, just there's buyers that show up. People want to buy lower. Just like I said in yesterday's video, when we start the day down 30 or 40 basis points, all of a sudden all these buyers come into the market. When we start up, people take money off the table. It's really an interesting market. Small caps came back all the way back. Mid caps, I think, actually finished in the green. That's MDY. But this had a nice charge up. By the way, if you remember that this, just kind of going over the news of the day, but there was a possible meeting, or I think Mnuchin reached out to China regarding setting up another meeting. So right when we were looking at the ugliest, we rallied back pretty hard, and there was a lot of other moves. And then it was kind of interesting because that move was sold off, and just in a couple, these were two 5-minute bars. Right after that, we sold off. We did make a higher low for the day, which was a good sign, and then we just continued to grind higher for the rest of the session. So those are the majors. Dow, which I don't look at every day, but I think the Dow chart is starting to interest me a bit. Just some other things going on besides the heavy tech names. There's some other areas of strength. Finished. This was up at, say, at one point about 35 basis points. Didn't give a great looking candle, but I think something to watch going forward. So. Let's talk a little bit about what emerging markets did today. They bounced pretty nicely. They were up 0.5%. The Chinese internet bounce. I think it'll be really interesting to see what China does tonight. They've been down. It's been hideous for them. And if you look at the Hang Seng, it's been down. I don't have the exact amount of days it's been down in a row, but you'll kind of see what I'm saying, see what I mean. And you can look at the same story with the Shanghai. Hang Seng and Shanghai are two different, completely different markets. But they've both been moving down together, and you could see we've got, besides this one day, right? So if you look at it for basically from the end of August, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 days. Out of the last 10 days, they've had one green day. Horrible price action. And if you go to that Shanghai, I think you'll see a closely the same thing. Yeah, I mean very close. I could add up those days too, but what with two days of green since the end of August there. So very ugly. So we'll see what China does tonight. It was down again last night, so we'll see. I think people are starting to look at some of these, and there's been a lot of positive notes. Some of these names like Baba coming back a little bit, now back above the announcement of Jack Ma. Baidu saw some call buying today. That's an interesting name. A lot of support down here at this point. Just a couple other names in this space. BZUN, I think also, another name that had good earnings, worth a shot. I'm leaving the best for last. I think this is the strongest chart out of the bunch. This is Momo, right? This is, if you've been watching what's been going on with Match, people are using these sites to date, and Match has just been screaming higher, and Momo is the China equivalent of that, and that looks better than anything else. I think it still needs to get above here. I would say 44.91. You could set an alert there for 44.91. That would give you a buy signal for Momo. But it's one of those names. If you're trading options, it's a high volatility name. You could also sell put spreads, collect a little bit of premium in that name, because I do think it's right now it's showing the best strength out of the group. So what else? A lot of other things to talk about. Boeing. This has been a name that's been on my radar for the last week. I sent this out to members about a week ago, and it just didn't trigger here, and it fell apart a little bit. Not fell apart, actually fell right to the 200-day moving average, but it finally gave that trigger of this downtrend line being taken out, and it's got one more step to go. I day traded this today. By the way, I day traded a lot of things today. I think with this type of market where it's giving you those opportunities where you don't even have to carry risk overnight if you don't want to, because you could buy some things into weakness and then sell them at the end of the day, because we are getting good ranges in these names. What I came back to, one of the things that I saw had two names really that had good strength was Salesforce. Was unfazed by today's volatility in the Qs. Continue new 52-week high in this one. I'm still long this one. Going to do my best to hold on to the remaining piece that I have on. I've been taking profit targets all the way since I put that trade on about a week ago. So real nice one in that. And then of course AMD, unbelievable. I mean, just unreal. The CEO was on Kramer last night. Very impressive. And she was at a conference today, I think, too. I forget what broker it was, but you're kidding me, right? When the semis are doing this, I mean, talk about relative strength, which is what I tweeted out earlier. The definition of relative strength. Take a look at these are the components. And when I tweeted this out earlier, AMD was the only one that was up, but it looks like the group recovered. SMH was down about over 2% today. It did come back nicely. You got a nice hammer bar, by the way, on that chart. We'll see if it could reclaim the 200-day moving average tomorrow. But there was some nice strength out of some things. But look at AMD up 7%, nothing even close. So that is the definition of relative strength in a particular group when a name does that, right? What else? Also, WDC, I would say, was pretty interesting today, up 2.9%. This one has been really beaten up. The other name in the space is STX. I think also turned around and has a positive day. Keep an eye on those two names. There was some call buying in Western Digital today. I also wanted to talk about, besides Salesforce, ServiceNow making a 52-week high today, breaking out. Shop, we talked about this yesterday as well. Clearly, there's somebody in here who's been accumulating the shares. Look at this candle that it gave you the other day, and couple members pointed this out yesterday. They've been long, but when you look at this on the 5 minute bar and you just see like a 45-degree angle, which is what we saw yesterday in this. I mean, that's called accumulation when you have this going on. Keep in mind there was some calls. This is a lot of times. I don't want to say it all the time, but that's the beauty about what we do at Tribeca Trade Group. We get into these names. We find these names before the call buying, and this saw call buying like about 20 minutes before, or maybe a half hour before the end of the day. At least it was definitely in the last hour of the day. Sorry, I'm just correcting myself as I speak. But, I mean, would you rather find this thing here, or would you rather buy it up here where the call buying happens? So, that's what I pride myself is finding these names, and that's what we do all day long. We do chart studies all day long. We look for different movers, we find them, and then we analyze whether or not we want to go into them. This is another one that I think is pretty interesting, QDEL. This is another name in the healthcare equipment. This is a life sciences company, but I think also you could also call it healthcare equipment. Really nice move here out of this, right? It kind of fell apart a little bit here. That's my word of the day, or phrase of the day. Also, ABMD, which I talked about yesterday, recovered from the lows. So I think pretty interesting. It still needs work, I think, this one. But I like how it did not break down for the day. So I think that one's interesting. Other names that I was looking at today, LGND saw some calls today. I'll go over more of the option activity. There was a lot of it. I didn't even get a chance to talk about gold. LGND, which has been a power name in this pharmaceutical, saw a little bit of calls. They may have been rolling some calls out from September, which kind of makes sense at this point. But those were the November 270s that traded. A little bit of Broadcom calls today. Some really interesting block trades that went up too. There's this SE, which I did not play today, but a couple members I believe played this, made some money on it. This made a real nice move. Notice this VPOC today, up over 6% today. Another storm name, hurricane name, LPX. Look at the breakout in this one. They make a bunch of what is it? I was going to say either drywall or, but I don't think that's. I may be wrong with that. So why don't I look at the company description? But definitely, I think a hurricane play or a storm play. They manufacture building materials and engineered wood products in the United States, Canada, Chile, and Brazil. They're used by home builders. Speaking of the home builders and Kramer, I got a lot out of Kramer's show last night. Toll Brothers CEO was on, and the interview was interesting because the CEO seems to think that the business is running very well, hitting on all cylinders or running on all cylinders. And Kramer asked the CEO, he's like, I don't understand what's going on with your stock price. And the CEO was like, I don't understand either. And he kind of had a big smile on his face. So, I think this is a name to possibly look at, maybe for a counter trend trade. Notice it's above the 50-day moving average. For any of these counter trend trades, I would first of all wait for a signal, such as getting above this purple line, which is the 50-day moving average, which is kind of a channel. That's why I don't have a trend line drawn here, because the 50-day moving average does it for you. But as long as you're using a stop here, I think it makes sense. Also, if you look at Lennar, that's the one that we've been seeing call buying in. Lennar just digesting here a little bit. Maybe wait for that one to get over that purple line, that 50-day moving average. Other call activity, by the way, gold, real strong move today. A lot of some gold mining calls were purchased. So, a lot of this stuff, you really have to use your own judgment. Just because, I say this all the time in these videos, but just because somebody buys calls, for example, right, I will give you what happened, in a group that we saw a lot of call buying in a couple weeks back. In EEM, FXI, ASHR, what happened to all those calls being bought in that? Basically nothing. They were probably all small gainers. Like, I think I tried the ASHR calls for like 30 or 40 cents. Maybe I made 10 cents on them, and then they went to zero. So, and there was a lot of that. So you have to be able to use your judgment. People, we see this a lot of times with option flow. Once there's some news out on the tape, like there was just about another China meeting, all of a sudden everybody starts buying EEM. So, you know, that to me is not a great signal. That's just somebody seeing a little bit of momentum and jumping on. So, I don't think that that's the best flow in the world. Whenever these guys just come in and start buying calls in something that's beaten up, so it's kind of like what we saw in the gold today as well. GG, I think was the biggest trade. There was also some GDX calls. If you're day trading this stuff, fine too. But as far as swing trade, if they're going out and they're buying next week's calls, they're just looking for short-term momentum. They're not looking for a swing trade. Again, just my opinion on all these videos. This is the color again that we provide in the room. By the way, check us out, TribecaTradeGroup.com. I don't plug that every day, but we do a midday session every day where we review charts. We also do a pre-market session too, that we go over all the setups, all the movers in the morning, and we really try to get everybody ready for the trading day. So that's the value that you get. It's a lot better than just these videos that I put together at the end of the day, recap videos. Caterpillar saw a little bit of calls too. Again, I would love it to see if this group can get going. This is Caterpillar, above value. It's got to get back above the 200-day moving average. I like Boeing better. All right, so I'm 16 minutes through the video. That's enough. I could keep going through some names, but I think that's enough. There was, like I said, a lot of option activity for the day. Have a great night, everybody, and I'll see you tomorrow.